I recognize the gentlewoman from New Mexico, Ms. Ledger Fernandez, for the purpose of offering an amendment designated Ledger Fernandez number 1. Without objection, the amendment is considered read.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My amendment is pretty straightforward. It states that nothing in this bill shall take effect until the Chief of the Forest Service certifies that the number of wildland firefighters is at or above the level in 2024. And I want to emphasize that this is not about increasing staff. It's about making sure that we don't decrease staff. President Trump and Elon Musk gutted the Forest Service's firefighting capability by slashing both budgets and staff. The Trump administration claims it's fully staffed for the fire season, but ProPublica reported yesterday that 4,500 Forest Service firefighting jobs remain vacant. 4,500 Forest Service firefighting jobs are unfilled. That's 27% of firefighting jobs. These critical jobs remain unfilled while 1 million acres burn across the country. I myself have spoken with employees who held red cards, who were pushed out, who took early retirement, who felt that they could no longer work there, who weren't actually rehired, as noted. And I want to quote from a letter that Tom Schultz, the chief of the Forest Service, circulated a letter to high-ranking officials in the agency that underscored the dire moment. And this is the quote, open quote. As expected, the 2025 fire year is proving to be extremely challenging, wrote Schultz. Open quote, we know the demand for resources outpaces their availability, close quote. And in that article that I cited from ProPublica, it notes that Schultz was at once directing staff to employ full suppression, that is, stomping out fires as quickly as possible instead of letting them burn for the sake of landscape management, what we're talking about today. But he also acknowledged that the resources necessary to pursue such an aggressive strategy are lacking. And I think that that's the key thing, that if we want to pursue different kinds of strategies, we need to make sure that we have the staffing available. We're not saying we should wait until we have more people, but we know how challenging last year was. We know how challenging the year before, and on and on. And so I think to make sure that we have the staffing to carry out the goals of this legislation are important, because we don't want to see burned out communities or a smaller burned out firefighting workforce. So I urge my colleagues to vote for this common sense amendment that would give our firefighters the resources, the boots on the ground they need to do the work, to protect our communities, to protect our ranchers, to protect, their livestock, and beautifully iconic places like the Lodge. It really is heartbreaking to see that such a beautiful place has burnt. I agree with that. But I'd love to see us to also have the personnel and the boots on the ground to be able to carry this out.
Mr. McClintock, you're recognized.
With all due respect to the
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Huffman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gosh, if hubris and sanctimony could be harnessed to fight fires, we'd be in great shape. But the truth is, this amendment is needed. It is common sense, and I support it. It is no secret that the Forest Service has been a victim of President Trump's effort to decimate federal agencies. Since January 20th, more than 15,000 Department of Agriculture employees have reportedly departed the agency. As many as 3,000 Forest Service red card employees being included. Red card employees, of course, are critical for supporting our wildfire management efforts. This administration claims that they have enough firefighters in place for the season, but reports from the field suggest otherwise, and frankly, anyone who represents fire country knows better. That is just absolutely false. If Congress is going to mandate the Forest Service carry out this full suppression policy in this bill, then obviously there's an obligation to make sure the agency has the staff to carry it out. And to my colleague from the Sierras, you know, sure, if fires are not raging all over the West, then suppression can actually be a quick way to reduce the need for resources. But those of us that represent fire country have been around long enough to know that when you get into the thick of a fire season and there are fires all over the West and resources are spread thin, and then there's a lightning strike and a new start, this policy of immediate suppression is going to cause even more difficulty for folks who are already exercising rationing and triage and trying to somehow battle all these fires with inadequate resources. So it's disingenuous to say that this is somehow a solution to the resource problem. One of the 10 standard fire orders, the guiding principles for all wildland firefighters is, quote, fight fire aggressively, having provided for safety first. H.R. 178 discards the second half of that principle. It pushes aggressive suppression even if safety hasn't been provided for, which would often put firefighters needlessly in danger. That's reckless in any context, but it's especially dangerous if we don't have enough firefighters on the ground to suppress fires responsibly. So Ranking Member Ledger-Fernandez's amendment simply requires that we have the same number of firefighters on USDA's payroll as we did last year, when there still weren't enough, by the way. Without enough trained personnel, the agency can't possibly meet the sweeping demands of this bill, and we shouldn't be mandating more fires get put out faster if we don't have anywhere near the staffing to do it safely or effectively. It's a great amendment. I support it, and I yield back. And I'd like to yield the balance to the ranking member.
Thank you, Ranking Member. And I think we really want to make sure that firefighters are on the ground and have enough of their fellow firefighters around them, supporting them for the issue about safety that we talked. And so I am really offering this because, you know, one of my first jobs was working in firefighting. I was one of the first women that the state of New Mexico hired to work and to help with regards to firefighters. Almost my entire family has worked in firefighting. My brothers worked in firefighting. My sister worked in firefighting. We kind of know what that's like. It's been a long time, but I remember what it's like. And you need the people around you to keep you safe. And with regards to the way fires work, we know that the initial suppression and some of the initial work is done by the Forest Service itself. So those small fires actually are the ones that you rely on your local firefighters for. And then when they do get big, you're right, they cost more money, but that's when you're bringing in the hot shots. That's when you're bringing in people from outside the agency. So having the people on the ground to be able to respond in this way is really important. So once again, I am offering this focusing on the needs of the firefighters themselves to have the help that they need to carry out these kinds of objectives. And as we noted when I read the statement, some of this I think is important to raise. This whole discussion is sending a huge message, not just the Laguna Fire, not just the Grand Canyon, about you got to be looking at this. You got to be doing a better job of not letting these fires get out of control. But I want you to also be able to have the resources to do that. And the Forest Service, as Tom Schultz's memo indicates, can actually engage in this right now as well. And this conversation is, I hope, going to put some pressure on him to do exactly that. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the time.
time has expired. Is there further discussion on it? Mr. Stauber, you're recognized.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. And I don't, I believe the intentions of the author of this amendment are well-intentioned, but I do want to enter into the record, if I may, with unanimous consent, July 14th, 2025, U.S. Department of Agricultural statement by Secretary Rollins, where she says in part, as of July 14th, the United States Forest Service has hired 99% of its 11,300 firefighting hiring target, with full staffing anticipated next week, which is this week. This is ahead of where the agency has been in previous years. This is ahead of where the agency has been in previous years. The United States Forest Service fire workforce is fully operational for this fire season, and I yield back.
Without objection, so ordered. Is there further discussion on the amendment? I recognize myself, and I want to thank Representative Ledger-Fernandez for her continued engagement on this important issue. Last year, we accepted a bipartisan amendment from the gentlelady that puts common sense guardrails around prescribed fire to prevent tragedies like the Hermit's Peak fire. The amendment offered a sensible provision that is actually included in H.R. 178 before us today. Unfortunately, I cannot support the amendment that she proposes, and in large part, that's because of the statement that Mr. Stauber just entered into the record, or the data that he entered into the record. And I believe we all agree that our wildland firefighting agency should be properly and appropriately staffed. To Mr. McClintock's point, if we reduce the number of fires, it's not going to take near as many firefighters, and that is real common sense when it comes to staffing and cost and for the health of the forest. But that's also why Republicans have been leaders on recruiting and retaining federal firefighters. In fact, earlier this year, Republicans codified permanent pay raises for wildland firefighters in the CR that was signed into law by President Trump. I know there were other issues in that bill, but none of my Democrat colleagues in the House or the Senate voted in support of that bill or its pay raises for wildland firefighters. That's also why the Trump administration has prioritized ensuring that federal wildland firefighting agencies are fully staffed. Earlier this month, as Representative Stauber mentioned, Forest Service Chief Tom Schultz testified before the Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources that the Forest Service has maintained 99% of capacity of their firefighting resources. As of June 29th, the Forest Service has hired 11,236 firefighters, which is higher than staffing numbers from previous years. For Wildland Fire Management Series 0456, an occupational series assigned to federal wildland firefighters, the Forest Service has had 442 employees at the end of 2024. Currently, the Forest Service has 431 employees in this series. That's a difference of 11 people out of 11,300 firefighters. On top of that, current employees have the option to opt into that series, and the Forest Service plans to advertise this in the coming weeks. So they are ultimately expecting that staffing in the 0456 series will be higher this year than it was in 2024. Put simply, we can't afford to delay the implementation of this critical life-saving legislation and let the Forest Service continue business as usual. As we speak, the fires are raging. The Laguna Fire in New Mexico has burned approximately 16,000 acres and devastated multi-generational family ranches. It began because the Forest Service failed to initially suppress a spot fire ignited by lightning on June 25th. Between July 1st and July 14th, this fire grew from 176 acres to 14,000 acres. Just like the Dragon Bravo fire, this fire should never have been allowed to happen in the first place. And if this amendment were to pass, it would allow Forest Service employees in New Mexico to monitor a growing fire like the Laguna Fire because of disproportionate concern over an 11-employee deficit. Although I appreciate the intent behind the amendment, tying the reasonable requirements in this bill to an arbitrary staffing level from a previous fiscal year would be an unhelpful addition. The vague wording in this amendment would also make it virtually impossible for the agencies to implement. While I cannot support the amendment, I do hope the gentlelady will continue to engage with us on these critically important wildfire and forest health issues. I urge my colleagues to vote no, and I yield back the balance of my time. Is there Ms. Elfrith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to yield my time to Ms. Ledger Fernandez.
Thank you, and thank you for, oh, yes, please.
With the chair's indulgence, I have a request for unanimous consent to enter into the record an article from Reuters that reports that the Forest Service is critically understaffed heading into fire season due to the Trump administration's staff cuts. Oregon and New Mexico Forest Service staff say crews are going hungry, running short of medical supplies and chainsaw fuel, and are having to fill in to scrub toilets instead of getting out into landscape to protect communities. That's one article. The second, Mr. Chair, is a July 22nd article from ProPublica that reports more than 4,500 Forest Service firefighting jobs, as many as 27%, remain vacant as of July 17th. The headline for this article is "The Forest Service Claims It's Fully Staffed for a Worsening Fire Season. Data Shows Thousands of Unfilled Jobs." There is plenty of reason here to believe we are not being told the truth by this administration, and I request these articles go into the record.
Without objection, so ordered. Ms. Ledger Fernandez, you're recognized for 5
Thank you,
minutes.
Mr. Chairman, and yes, I do care about this issue a lot. And if it is indeed true that we are staffed, then there's no issue. My amendment would be, check, we are fully staffed, so let's go forward and implement this as statute versus, because once again, this is something that the Forest Service can do and should have done in various instances that we're talking about. So if, as noted in the conversation and with what Wallens is saying, if they're fully staffed, then great. Then there is no impediment to moving forward on this. Yeah, sure.
So I understand correctly, if the Agriculture Secretary is right, and frankly, I don't believe what the assurance that we've gotten, but if she's correct, that everything is great, they're fully staffed, then your amendment doesn't stand in their way at all, right? There's no new burdens, there's no problem. What's the downside of passing your amendment?
I mean, that's it, right? And I think that the ProPublica article said that these statements are being made that we are staffed 99, at first it was, we've got a percentage, and now it's 99%, and now it's, we're hearing that they've got more people on. Well, if that is the case, that's great. The ProPublica article actually looked at the data from when they input who's been hired. So, if it is fully staffed, great, then we have the people on the ground to keep everybody safe and to actually carry out the intent of the legislation. And I'm going to keep raising it over and over. We need the boots on the ground. The boots on the ground is what actually turns out the fire. And to be able to put the boots on the ground, you do need the staffing. And I truly appreciate the fact that both Democrats and Republicans have long called for increasing the salaries, increasing the benefits, increasing the protections with regards to covering the health effects from firefighting. Those are really important, and this is where we found some great bipartisan work, and so I do appreciate that the chair has pointed out. And while we might have voted against a bill for other reasons, I think there is strong support for those kinds of things. So that, that's the spirit of the amendment, is making sure that people are safe and that they can actually get this done. And if we're doing it, if this is a way of like pushing them to do that, then that's kind of what I want to do, right, is make sure that this is done. And of course I'll yield.
We're talking about putting boots on the ground. That's what Mr. McClintock's amendment does. It says you've got to put boots on the ground. If they're told not to fight the fire, then you don't need any firefighters. What we want to do is give the direction that when the fire starts, you put the boots on the ground. And I think, with the data that we've got, there are plenty of boots to put on the ground if you get the order to go put the fire out.
Yeah, I think in that sense, it's like we all want boots. We want boots on the ground. But what my amendment goes is, let's make sure that those boots are possible. And if they are there, if the data is true, then my amendment would not, having this in the bill would not at all impact the ability to carry this out.
If the gentlelady would yield.
I have a
my-
minute and 18, and I'd love to yield.
My objective is to reduce the number of fires that require boots on the ground and save our forests and our resources.
Thank you very much, and thank you. As I said, once again, I do appreciate, I think this discussion and this bill and everything we're doing today is going to improve, hopefully, what actually happens with these fires. And with that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Yielding,
Back to my colleague
Ms.
who yielded
Elfreth.
me time.
Ms. Elfreth, gentlelady yields back. Is there further discussion on the amendment? If there's no further discussion, the question is on the amendment offered by Ms. Ledger Fernandez, designated Ledger Fernandez number 1. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The opinion of the chair, the noes have it, and the amendment is not agreed to.